Okay, great. Let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vanessa Lieberman, and I'm the Department Safety Coordinator for both Viticulture Enology and Food Science and Technology. Today, we're going to talk about workplace safety and go over what all the acronyms on the screen mean. So I apologize, there's a lot of information on these slides. So if I'm going too fast or if you need me further explanation, feel free to stop me. And thank you for your attention and patience. All right, let's get started. Okay, so these are the main topics we will discuss today. We will discuss the Injury and Illness Prevention Plan, or IIPP, which is filled out and provided to employees and students by the department. Training designated by the UC Office of the President. Hazard communication, which is the responsibility of the PI or supervisor and EH&S. The Emergency Action Plan, which is specific to and provided by the department. And proper ergonomics training and resources, which are the responsibility of the PI or supervisor and safety services. The Safety Services website, which is listed down here, also has a lot of resources on these topics. Okay, so let's discuss the IIP a bit more. IIPP, excuse me. So the Injury and Illness Prevention Plan, or IIPP, details management commitment and assignment of responsibilities for those maintaining and implementing the plan. It discusses various safety communication systems with employees. The IIPP outlines a system for assuring employee compliance with safe work practices, as well as scheduled inspections and evaluation systems. It also contains procedures for correcting unsafe or unhealthy conditions, safety and health training and instructions, record keeping and documentation, and accident investigation procedures. Training has been developed for the most likely injuries that occur in a workplace. These include transportation injuries, slips, trips, and falls, violence by people and animals, hazardous equipment, hazardous environment, and fires and explosions. These trainings are available on the online LMS system or in the job safety analysis and the hazard communication system to employees. So what causes accidents? Certain states such as rushing, frustration, fatigue, and complacency lead to errors. These errors include eyes not on the task, mind not on task, being caught in the line of fire, and loss of balance, traction, or grip. Such errors can cause less risky hazards to become more risky hazards. So now let's talk about some basic safety principles. So what are some of the hazards we encounter in offices? The most common hazards include ergonomic issues, fire and emergency evacuation, electrical cords and equipment, heat generating sources, hand and power tools and equipment, office machines such as copiers, paper cutters, shredders, and jam machines, office chemicals, slips, trips, and falls, general housekeeping, furniture or layout of an office, and motor vehicle accidents. Part of hazard communication is the job safety analysis, or JSA. The job safety analysis identifies and evaluates employee work functions, potential health or injury hazards, and specifies appropriate safe practices, personal protective equipment, and tools and equipment that are needed to perform these jobs safely. JSAs can be completed for work sites, individual employees' job description, or a class of employees' job descriptions. The following are examples of what a job safety analysis for staff might look like. It might include things such as handling and moving heavy equipment, operation of motor vehicles, and hazards associated with general office work. A job safety analysis will also include what training must be done, who must complete the training, and the time frame with which each training must be completed. Site-specific training is also given to laboratory or laboratory support personnel. This training details the location and proper use of safety equipment, such as personal protective equipment, fire alarms, safety hour-assisted showers, spill and first aid kits, chemical fume hoods, and biological safety cabinets. It also reviews proper emergency response and ensures the department-specific emergency action plan and injury and illness prevention plans, in addition to lab-specific standard operating procedures, have been read and understood. Additional safety trainings, both online and instructor-led, include injury prevention, emergency preparedness, general and equipment safety, ergonomics, and lab safety for support personnel. So if you're going into the laboratory, proper attire is required in order to work in the lab. Long pants or skirts and tops with full coverage must be worn. In other words, must be covered from the shoulders down. I've seen a lot of midriffs recently. So midriffs are not allowed, bare shoulders, bare ankles, stockings, nylons, and leggings or jeans with holes in them are not acceptable. You must also wear closed-toed and heeled shoes that fully cover your feet, and tying up long hair is advised. So LMS online training can be assigned by supervisors, administrators, and department safety coordinators. Using the LMS site, you can follow up on training that has been assigned and see what training is past due. Safety inspectors can see what what trainings individuals have completed and when it was completed. EH&S has multiple safety nets, including topics on personal and workplace safety, fire prevention, occupational health, emergency preparedness, campus environment, risk management services, and food safety. These can all be found on the Safety Services website. CalOSHA requires that employers inform employees about hazards associated with hazardous chemicals that are present in the workplace. Industrial and manufacturing or commercial laboratories are subject to the requirements of Title 8 CCR Section 5194, titled Hazard Communication, and are covered under the Hazard Communication Program requirements. The UC Davis Hazard Communication Program, also called HAZCOM, applies to industrial workplaces, manufacturing or commercial laboratories and activities such as animal husbandry areas, shops, custodial, craft centers, theaters, and studios. The program requires employees to maintain a hazardous chemical inventory in the UC Davis Chemical Inventory System, maintain and have access to safety data sheets, understand hazards associated with the chemicals they work with through labeling and other forms of warning, receive safety training and other information to minimize the risks associated with hazardous chemicals used in the work area, develop, implement, and maintain a written HAZCOM program. This can be done by following the general HAZCOM program and completing the department-specific HAZCOM program summary. So an important component of hazard communication is a safety data sheet, or SDS. The SDS describes the name of the chemical, the hazardous nature of the chemical, physical characteristics, fire and explosion information, reactivity of the chemical, health hazard information such as health effects and symptoms, personal protective equipment needed when using the chemical, how to handle leaks, spills, and disposal, and any special precautions. In the SDS, you will also find the Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals, or GHS. This labeling system uses a signal word such as danger or warning and gives a precautionary statement indicating how to properly handle the product in order to minimize risks to the user. Hazards of the chemicals are associated with an H code. H200s are physical hazards, H300s are health hazards, and H400s are environmental hazards. The lower the number within a category, the higher the hazard. So H300 is more hazardous than H304. These hazard codes are also associated with hazard symbols. You see these symbols in the chemical bottles. Each symbol depicts the hazard associated with the chemical. So the orange symbols are what used to be used on older chemical bottles, and now they've switched to these white and red symbols. But if you still have some older chemicals that are not expired, you'll just know that these are the old symbols that they used to use. They get the point across. They change the symbols moving forward because they look a little more clear than the old symbols used to look. Okay. So here's an example of an STS. Each section provides the information discussed on the previous slide. So by looking at this STS, we can tell that WD-40 is flammable, a health hazard, pressurized, and it has additional health effects of causing drowsiness or dizziness. If you read further on the SDS, it will tell you how to safely handle, store, and dispose of this chemical. Okay. So many chemicals require standard operating procedures, or SOPs. CalOSHA requires use of SOPs for work with hazardous chemicals. SOPs document the specific procedures for safe handling, storage, and disposal of hazardous chemicals. PIs and supervisors are responsible for establishing SOPs relevant to health and safety for activities involving hazardous chemicals under their direction. Okay, so now let's discuss emergency preparedness. The emergency action plan must be in writing and include the following elements: emergency escape procedures and emergency escape route assignments, procedures to account for all employees after an emergency evacuation, preferred means of reporting fires and other emergencies, names or regular job titles of persons or departments who can be contacted for further information or explanation of duties under the plan, a system to notify employees of an emergency, procedures for employees who remain to complete critical operations before they evacuate, rescue and medical duties for those employees who are to perform them, and training for all employees on the EAP. The written plan must be kept in the workplace and made available for employees to review. So I just released the food science EAP and IIPP. I know you guys are in the cluster, so I think Stephanie does the IIPP and EAP for you guys. So chat with Stephanie later about that, or if she wants to chime in at any point, just let me know. Yeah. You should also be aware of the location of all the exits for your workplace and building, the alarm pillboxes and fire extinguishers, the nearest phone, safety showers and eye washes, first aid kits, and spill kits. These are covered during the site-specific training. Also, if you need assistance in the event of evacuation to safely exit the building, please contact me so we can set up aid and training for emergency evacuations. So here's the evacuation map for the first floor of RMI cell. This map details the location of all the fire alarms, fire extinguishers, and exits. So here's the same map for the first floor of RMI North. Being familiar with these maps will help you be more prepared in the event of emergency because you already know where the fire extinguishers are, you know where the emergency exits are, and you know where the fire alarms are should you need any of these things. During a building evacuation, personnel in the building must meet at a designated locations. For viticulture terminology, the meeting area is to the left-hand side of the parking garage if you're facing the parking garage. And for food science technology, it's to the right. Do not leave during an evacuation. Personnel must check in with their supervisors or department safety coordinators so that someone knows they have safely evacuated the building so that we don't go looking for you in the event of an emergency. In the event of a fire, follow these procedures. If the fire is small, you may attempt to neutralize the threat without endangering yourself. If you are unsure, leave the area, being sure others are out. Close the door and evacuate the nearest building fire alarm. Dial 911 from a landline or 530-752-1230 from a cell phone. So the reason why we have people dial this number from the cell phone is because sometimes the 911 call will reach out to Vacaville, and this number is the direct UC Davis Fire Department number, so they'll get to us faster. Stay away from the area and close the door. Go to the agreed meeting place and stand by to advise emergency personnel when they arrive. So I'd like to talk a little bit about fire extinguishers. So there are 5 different types of fire extinguishers. All buildings in the RMI complex are equipped with combination A, B, and C, and they emit a powder that suffocates the fire and need to be checked monthly to ensure effectiveness. So as I said, these need to be checked monthly. So how do you check the fire extinguishers? So when you look at the fire extinguisher, you want to look at the gauge and make sure the needle is within the green range. You look at the needle as if you were looking at a meniscus of liquid. So basically like bend down to its eye level and make sure it's within the green. And once you have finished checking that, make sure the pin is intact and the fire extinguisher looks intact in all other ways. Put your initials and the date of the time you checked it on the tag. If there are any issues, contact fire prevention at ucdavis.edu. So I have a video of how to use a fire extinguisher. For sake of time, I won't play it now, but I will post these slides to the BFTV Resources safety page, and you can watch this video after. It's a great way to learn how to use a fire extinguisher. But basically, you can remember how to use a fire extinguisher by remembering the acronym PASS. Pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, and stand back 5 to 6 feet. Squeeze the handle and move carefully closer as the powder is being discharged, and sweep back and forth to cover the range of the fire. This should only be done with the fire's beginning stage. If the flames are large, evacuate immediately, and 911 should have already been alerted when the fire started. So keep in mind, fire extinguishers will only last 20 to 30 seconds. This isn't a very long time. So as soon as it's done and the fire is extinguished, just get out of the building. In the event of an earthquake, follow these procedures. Get under a desk, table, or tray, or etc. during the shaking. Leave the building after the shaking is over. If you are outside during the shaking, stay clear of buildings, trees, or other structures that could fall down on you. Dial 911 or 530-752-1230 to report any fires, ruptured pipes, or down electric lines. Assist injured persons in securing medical attention. Go to the agreed meeting place and stand by to advise emergency personnel when they arrive. In the event of an active shooter, there are 3 immediate actions: run, hide, and fight. If you can't run, hide, and if you can't hide, fight. During this type of emergency, seek help. Call 911 and provide as much information as possible, such as location, what is happening, description of the suspect, your name, and your number. Silence your phone. If you can't speak, turn the sound back on and leave the line open so that the police can hear what's happening at the scene. So more information on this can be found on the Safety Services website, and I also highly recommend that everyone take the online active shooter training offered by the LMS system. Okay, so some campus safety tips. Always be alert of your surroundings. This includes suspicious persons, suspicious vehicles. Report any suspicious activity to the UC Davis Police at 530-754-2677. Do not allow strangers to enter behind you at secured facilities such as the building, and do not lend anyone your entry keys. Report any criminal activities such as break-in, intruder, robbery, assault immediately to 911 or to the emergency line 530-752-1230. Always lock your doors and secure property by locking doors to offices, laboratories, and buildings. At campus office facilities, report malfunctioning or broken doors and windows to facilities at 530-752-1655. So some department safety tips: do not leave personal items or items valued in your vehicles and always lock your vehicle. Set up a communication system with your coworkers. If you're working late or alone, this can be used to alert of your safe arrival and departure from the building in a case of emergencies. Make sure all entry doors are closed and not propped open to prevent any break-ins. We have had a lot of issues with break-ins this past year. So if you see any doors that are propped open that shouldn't be propped open, you 100% have my permission to remove the prop just to make sure that nothing gets stolen. And report any building malfunctions to BFTV facilities at ucdavis.edu, or you can call the facilities number if it's an emergency. So some campus resources for personal or property safety. The UC Davis campus emergency line, again, is 530-752-1230. This can be used for police, fire, or medical emergencies. This is the number to use if you're on a cell phone, but if you're on a landline, you can also dial 911. The UC Davis Police Department 24-hour non-emergency number is 530-752-1727. This can be used to report suspicious behavior for non-emergency situations, or they can be contacted if you're on campus and you feel unsafe. So the UC Davis Police Department offers escort ride services called Safe Rides. You can find more information about them at police.ucdavis.edu/saferides, or you can call them at 530-754-2677. Their hours of operation are 7 days a week from 5 to 10 p.m. from one place on campus to another location on campus, or 7 days a week from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. from any on-campus location to any location in the city of Davis. They also do VIP wheelchair transportation 24/7 on campus to any other campus location, and 7 days a week from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. from on campus to any location in the city of Davis. Okay, so there's some apps for emergency notification. So make sure you're registered for the Warn Me app. If you're signed up for me, you'll receive notifications and updates about emergencies happening on campus and in Davis. So there's a personal safety app called the Everbridge app. This can be used to make emergency phone calls, set up emergency contacts, or to report suspicious activity. There's also a relatively new app called the Translock app. This is for the Safe Ride program, in which you can arrange for a safe ride from the UC Davis Police Department using this app instead of calling the number. Okay, reporting unsafe conditions. There's a form in the IAPP for reporting unsafe conditions. Work orders to facilities can also be turned in for building issues that are unsafe. For example, loose tiles, poor lighting, leaks, or other issues. You can also report things you consider unsafe to your supervisor or department safety coordinator. Unsafe conditions or near misses can also be reported to safety services and to Cal OSHA. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more unsafe conditions or near misses. These are important as well, as they can help us prevent an accident from happening in the future. So as stated earlier, any incidents or concerns may be reported to safety services or other resources. All faculty members, staff, students, and visitors at UC Davis can participate in making the campus a safe workplace to work, study, and live by identifying health and/or safety hazards or unsafe conditions by informing those responsible for the problem area. Employees are advised that use of this form or other reports of unsafe conditions or practices are protected by law. So it's illegal for the employer to take any action against an employee in reprisal for exercising their right to participate in communications involving safety. Okay, so let's get into one more common hazards for non-lab staff, ergonomics. So what is ergonomics? Ergonomics is the Greek term for laws of work. It is a science of adapting workstations, tools, equipment, and job techniques to be compatible with human anatomy and physiology in order to reduce the risk of musculoskeletal disorder injuries due to ergonomic stressors. In other words, we want to fit the job to the person, not the person to the job. This can be done with the use of various ergonomic equipment, such as workstations, chairs, pointer devices, and keyboards. So here's some examples of different ergonomic setups. Equipment such as adjustable desks, adjustable chairs and screens, and leg rests can help ease the ergonomic stressors. Good posture is important when performing computer-based tasks. This diagram depicts proper ergonomically correct posture. Table height should be the equivalent to elbow height. Wrist should be in a neutral position. Head should be upright and over the shoulders. Eyes should be looking slightly downward without bending the neck. Backrest should support the natural curve of the lower back. Elbows should be bent at 90 degrees and shoulders should be relaxed. Thighs should be horizontal with a 90 to 110 degree angle at the hip. And feet should be flat on the floor or supported by a footrest. Since many people are working from home right now, ergonomics is extremely important. These days, ergonomics programs has many helpful tips on ergonomics while working remotely. And I could send those links as well. And I think I have them on this slide. So on the Safety Services website, you can find these tips for setting up home workstations and even taking a training for performing an at-home ergonomic self-evaluation. So this is the new training that they just developed within the past year for setting up your workstation for at-home working. Let me know if you guys have any questions on this. Okay, so here's a diagram of some ergonomic stretches that could help. Remember to take breaks, stretch, and move around a bit while performing computer-based tasks. So this concludes my presentation. That was a lot faster than I thought it was going to be. Thank you all for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And if you think of anything later on, please feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns you might have related to safety. Thanks, guys. Let me start my video again. You see there's chat.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Oh, yes. Hi.
Hi. Quick question. I know that you said you were doing so it's recording. And then can you send me a hard copy of the slides, or are you gonna
definitely. I can send you a hard copy of the slides. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's do that, because I saw a couple things. I made some notes that I think with some of our newer employees, I would like to update some of my trainings that I do when they first get here. So
definitely. I was going to have both of these things, both the recording and the hard copy of the slides, posted to the safety resources page, so everybody will have access to it. And the slides will have the functioning links. I just saw the chat.
okay,
So yeah, sorry about that. That was confusing between the 1234 and 1230 for an emergency. So I asked EHS about this and I forgot to re-update this slide. They were confused when I mentioned this. So just use the 1230 number. My apologies on that. I forgot to re-update my slide. I saw 1234 in a different email. And when I asked somebody from EHS, they were like, oh, we have a different number for that. So yeah, 1230 would be the main number to contact, and I will update the slides before I post them. Thank you for catching that. Any other questions?
I have a question,
Yes.
and it doesn't really involve you because it's a BAE question, bio and ag engineering. I mostly, when I'm on campus, work at Boehner, and so it's not under you, and there's a different safety coordinator for that department in that building. I'm fully aware, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So the understanding I have is that they're in the break room, which is like a storage closet that was modified to have a microwave and a coffee pot and some other things. We're not supposed to use those electronic devices because there's concern about the circuitry not being adequate.
Right.
And I'm wondering from your perspective, how to address that so that it gets addressed and not just shut down.
That's honestly a fire hazard. Do you know if BAE has had their fire inspection yet?
We don't know if it's a fire hazard just because somebody said it's a fire hazard. I think it needs to be evaluated.
Okay, so I can contact Audrey Sluckan. She's the person who comes out and does the fire inspection. She would be willing to help me out with that. So if it is a fire hazard and you can't have it in those spaces, then you need to be given a reasonable space to take breaks. Because that, that's your right to have somewhere to, make food and have coffee and whatnot.
Well, there is a separate kitchen, so it's not the break room in that regard, but it's just a weird space that got adapted for coffee making, apparently. And there are other people on this
Got
meeting
it.
that know a lot more about it than I do because they spend more time in that space.
Got it.
I would, if I can chime in, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Shannon, let's do this. Why don't you tell Vanessa of exactly, if, I'm guessing you're talking about the one that's in the admin office, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's start. Yeah, let's start a,
I think
Yeah.
most of that needs to be just removed. That microwave was put in there to be used and we decided it wasn't going to be functional there and it's still there. So no one's ever used it. I think it needs to be that was like pre-pandemic and no one's really
yeah,
cleaned
that's
out
what I was-
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so let's start.
Did
let's
you
start
decide
an-
that based on some incident that happened? Like, were there sparks flying, or was it just
No,
a guess based
no.
on
Just